Don't y'all just love it whenever you wake up to some really freaking good news? That is what happened today because Square Enix had a shareholders meeting and they talked about the success of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 as well as the success of turn-based games and what that means for their future. And I do want to talk all about that today, and I definitely do think that's worth a sub as I'm trying my hardest to level up this year, and your help has helped me so much. I only have about 500 subs as of today left to go before I get that plaque. Thank you so much for that, really from the bottom of my heart. It's really just absolutely amazing to me. I know it's going to be happening any freaking day now. It's just crazy. So if y'all can help me out with that and be one of those 500, I would greatly appreciate it. So whenever asked about Clair Obscur Expedition 33's success, Square Enix says that turn-based RPGs is its origin as well as its future. So yeah, they said the turn-based RPG genre is still one that they highly value and that they have plans for, despite Final Fantasy's more action-oriented direction as of late. This again comes from the latest shareholders meeting. So one of the questions, they went ahead and they brought it up. They said, while that jrpg is visually quite modern, the gameplay does take inspiration from the older Final Fantasy titles, mostly because of the turn-based gameplay, which is in stark contrast to Final Fantasy 16. And as we all know, Final Fantasy 16 didn't exactly, smash the sales record books or anything like that, like they did hope for. And we also know that taking Final Fantasy 7 and taking that from a turn-based game, chopping it up into 3 different parts, and then turning that into action, didn't exactly lead to smashing sales either. Remake sold quite well, but then Rebirth kind of lost 1 million or so people, and then we have Part 3 still coming up, which we know will be action. But something tells me that since they've done this, since they've taken that beloved classic and they've chopped it up into 3 different games, and they've kind of modified the story, and they went ahead and they changed the gameplay and all that, and then it didn't exactly, light up the sales charts, that more than likely Square is going to be revisiting that decision if they do any other, remakes. Final Fantasy 9, just saying. But we also, we don't know, but we can say that Final Fantasy IX is the most classic game that they have in their series, and it harkens back to the old days, so them taking that action would just be insanity. That would just be crazy. So Square Enix did respond to this, and they said that they are well aware of Clair Obscur Expedition 33's success, and they view turn-based RPGs as the origin of Square Enix, and the developer also says that humble turn-based RPGs is still one that it values, and it plans to deliver in the future. So I personally grew up on Final Fantasy. I got the very first one back on the NES whenever I was in 3rd grade, and I've been hooked ever since. And Final Fantasy 1 through 10 was, all turn-based. And then they went a little bit experimental with Final Fantasy 12, with the Gambit system. MMOs were big at the time and all that. I was playing EverQuest at the time, so they kind of did their little spin on it or whatever. And, 11 was an MMO in their take, and I enjoyed 12. 13 came around, that went back to turn-based, then 13.3 came out, which was really more action, then 15 came out, which actually did really well in sales, but not a lot of people liked it. Then 16 came out, and everybody's like, what is going on? This is more like Devil May Cry. But then, after that, Square Enix came out and they said, you know what? Final Fantasy doesn't follow the trends, they set the trend. So they were saying, 16 is a trend setter. We're going to set this trend, and we're going to have all these other RPGs follow our lead. And maybe that was the case back in the day, but how's that working out for you, Square Enix? Because, since Final Fantasy 16 set the trend with their action-based combat, we have had Expedition 33. Smashing success. We've had Baldur's Gate 3, turn-based, incredibly successful. Metaphor ReFantazio, that one game of the year. That one game of the year for me, as well as a lot of other people were saying that that's the game of the year last year. And then, of course, you can't discount Persona 5, and we also know that Sega leaked some sales data recently from some of their games and everything, and you know what their best-selling Yakuza games were? I'm gonna tell you right now, it wasn't the action-based ones. Yeah, Yakuza Like a Dragon and Yakuza Infinite Wealth actually sold a whole lot more than Like a Dragon, the man who forgot his name or can't remember his name or whatever that one was, as well as Pirate Yakuza. Yeah, so the 2 turn-based ones sold much better than the 2 action ones. So, I mean, if that doesn't kind of like send the message home, I don't know what will. So we also know that other turn-based RPGs by Square Enix have been very successful. Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, Bravely Default, and then last year they came out and they said, you know what, one console game in particular sold above expectations. And you know that that's saying a lot because normally Square Enix's expectations for sales are like through the freaking roof. And you know what game that was that sold above expectations? Yeah, Dragon Quest III HD 2D, a remake of an NES game that originally came out in 1989 in Japan, sold above expectations in 2025. So if that doesn't say, you know, that turn-based is here to stay, I don't know what is. And I've got to say this as well. For those of you who are lamenting Square Enix and the death of turn-based RPGs and things like that, you know, I just rattled off a whole bunch of turn-based RPGs, but you know, Square, maybe Final Fantasy isn't going the turn-based route like we want it to, but turn-based is still here, and Square Enix is still putting out turn-based games like the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, Dragon Quest Monsters, The Dark Prince, the upcoming Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes, Fantasian, the Octopath series, the Bravely series, and let's not forget the Saga series. We had 4 freaking Saga games. Just in the last, like, what, year or so? We had Saga Frontier 2, Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, like one of the best remakes I've ever played. It's up there with like the Trials of Mana remake, y'all. It is insanely freaking good. And then we also had Saga Emerald Beyond. So no matter what happens with Final Fantasy 17, you know that there are still some turn-based RPGs coming out by Square, which is just fantastic. But this all really just does beg the question. What will Final Fantasy 17 be like? Are they going to stay this action course, or are they going to lean back into their history and, you know, do another turn-based game? To me, I personally think, or maybe it's not what I think, it's just really what I want. You know, I would love to see something in the vein of an SNES Final Fantasy game, an HD 2D AAA Final Fantasy game. Think about the world map of Final Fantasy VI, Mode 7, that HD 2D goodness. You know, I would love to see that. The turn-based battling system, I think that would be absolutely fantastic. HD 2D has been doing really well for them. It's something that they actually pioneered. They set that trend, and that's the trend that people are following. That's the trend that people want, that old school HD 2D. The other trend that they set with Devil May Cry Final Fantasy 16 isn't exactly being followed, so I don't know what the future has in store for us, but hopefully it is more turn-based RPGs, or at least Final Fantasy going back to its roots. But now I want to hear from y'all. What do you feel about this news? Do you think this is good or bad? What do you think Final Fantasy 17 has in store for us? And we all know after this, Dragon Quest 12, yeah, it's going adult, but it's not going to be action. It's definitely going to be turn-based, and that's just great. So let me know how you think about this in the comments, and as always, have a good day.